This is Hope Hodge with Human Events. I'm here with Dutch Member of Parliament Geert, who is here to speak about his book, Marked for Death, about his experiences speaking out against radical Islam and the pressure that he's lived under as a result. His book is available through Eagle Publishing, was released May 1st. To get right into the questions, something that our audience should know about you is that you always have with you 24 hours a day this armed guard, and this is because of threats made against you by Islamic extremists. So if you could just talk about that a little bit and how it's still part of your life and if you're still experiencing threats because of things you said.
Well, I would do that, but maybe you allow me first to say that I'm very proud to be on the program of Human Events. I always knew that it was the favorite magazine of my favorite American president, Ronald Reagan, so I'm very happy to be here. Well, unfortunately, since I spoke out against Islam 8 years ago and spoke the truth about the, as I see it, the real identity of this ideology, I was marked for death, and I got death threats and fatwas. I was banned from many countries around the world. I was taken to court in my own country, to a criminal court. Luckily, after a 3-year trial, I was acquitted on all charges. And, well, I've lived a life until today that you would not wish your worst enemy to have. I lived with my wife for security reasons 6 months in a prison cell, actually in the same cell where the Lockerbie suspects were held. And they were freed after committing a crime, as you know, to Libya. My wife and I didn't commit a crime except for telling the truth, and we were put in the cell that they were in. So it's a tough life, but it's not about me. It's about all the people in the free Western world who have the guts to speak out against Islam. Whether it's cartoonists from Scandinavia like Kurt Westergaard or Lars Vilks or others, the penalty you pay is a very tough one.
Now, something that it surprised me about the book is that you spend most of it talking not about your life experiences, but about Islam and some of the basic history and the principles and the verses in the Quran. And I think many Westerners simply have not opened the Quran and have not read what it says. What is the message that you want to communicate to the Western world? I mean, should people go out and pick it up and familiarize themselves with what it actually says?
Yeah, I hope a lot of people do. I tried in my book, Marked for Death, to expose Islam, to look at Islam for what it really is. And in order to do that, you have to study the Quran, and you have to study the life of Muhammad, who is an example to so many Muslims, more than 1 billion, all over the world. And the conclusion, if you read the Quran and the life of Muhammad, the Sirah, you will see that Islam means more aggression, more violence, more submission. The word itself means submission, and less freedom. And my party for freedom, and I believe all freedom-loving people in the world, don't want to lose the freedom that we have today. And if you look at the Quran, for instance, you cannot compare it to the Bible. The Bible is a book of love. The Quran is a book of hatred, of violence against apostates, against Jews, against Christians, against the kafir, anybody who is not a Muslim. If you look at the life of Muhammad, certainly the time he lived in Medina, after he went from Mecca to Medina, he was not a kind of Jesus. He was a warlord. He was somebody who butchered Jewish tribes. He was somebody who cheated, who even was married to a 6-year-old little girl. So if you expose Islam for what it is, and you see that besides the symbols from a God, a holy book and a temple, 90% is ideology, and a totalitarian ideology, the best example really is that if you want to leave Islam, the penalty, you're an apostate, and the penalty is death. This is, as you know, a difference from Christianity or Judaism, and this is what Islam has in common with communism and fascism. So I hope with my book to show people what the real identity about Islam is, that we lose our freedom the more Islam we will have, and that we should stop calling it, for political correct reasons, a religion where it in reality is an ideology that will cost us our freedom at the end of the day.
Now, you know, in the U.S., it's a very different situation from a lot of the examples you give in your book. We haven't experienced the degree of conflict and the degree of violence you mention. You know, how would you compare and contrast the situations in the way that kind of the maybe Islamic culture lives in harmony or opposition in the U.S. and in Europe?
Well, there is nothing wrong with harmony. Once again, I have nothing against Muslims. I have a problem with the ideology, not with the people. But if you look at Europe today, you see in the last decades, because of the mass immigration from Islamic countries, you see changes only for the worse. If you look at honor killings, if you look at genital mutilation, if you look at forced weddings, if you look at Sharia banking, a lot of Americans don't know, but in the United Kingdom, already 60 Sharia courts are active, where the statement of a woman is worth half than that of a man. This is Europe today. And what I try to say in my book is to the Americans is, please don't think that what is happening in Europe today will not happen to America tomorrow, but learn from our mistakes. We can learn a lot from America. We are in the need of some kind of a First Amendment that we don't have. And I'm very jealous of your First Amendment. At least in America you can speak out and say what you believe in. In Holland you are not only threatened by death, but you are taken to court because we don't have a First Amendment. So we can learn from America. But America can also learn from the mistakes that we had, because political correct, often leftish and liberal politicians and intellectuals believed and still fool the people by saying that all cultures are equal. Cultural relativism is the biggest disease we face in Europe and in America, I believe, today. All cultures are not equal. Our culture is based on Christianity, on Judaism, humanism, and that culture is far superior than the culture of darkness called Islam. And you're not a xenophobe or a racist or a fascist to say so. We should be proud on our own identity. We should be proud on who we are and what we are. Our values are totally different than the Islamic values, and we should fight them in a democratic and non-violent way to redress all those problems.
Now, having said that, as you say yourself, there are many peace-loving Muslim people who don't adhere to the most extreme tenets of Islam. Now, how do we live in harmony with these peace-loving Muslims without taking away any of their essential rights? How do these cultures intersect and interact?
Well, I believe that people can assimilate. And I would applaud that Muslims, like any other people, would assimilate in a society. That their only law they adhere to is the law, is our constitution, are the values that are dominant in our society, which are not based on Islamic principles. We don't want Sharia in our society. We don't treat apostates or women or homosexuals with a death penalty. So I believe that we should not respect the ideology called Islam, because Christians, Jews, apostates will be the first to pay the price if Islam will have its way. Trust me, there won't be any lenience from them to us. So I think we should invest in the moderate people, but not expect that Islam itself will be moderated in 1,000 years. So let them assimilate in our societies. If they do, I believe they are equal to anybody else with all the rights that we all have in our free democratic societies. But if they don't, if they cross the line, if they start acting according to Sharia law or things like that, I believe we should punish them and send them away. This is the policy that we advocated in the Netherlands, and I believe we should advocate anywhere in the Western world.
Oh. And now in your situation, your government ultimately did acquit you and now defends you 24 hours a day, if I understand correctly. Now, your government has defended you. Do you see any kind of resurgence of a viewpoint similar to your own in Western Europe? Or even a resurgence of kind of the conservative ideals that you hold?
Yeah, well, the bad news is that the political elite, the politicians, are still not taking the problem of Islamization too serious, not only in America, but also in Europe. But the changes are for the better. I'm still an optimist, and I'm an optimist because I know that the people, the Vox Populi, are in a growing amount of numbers fed up with the politicians who are ignoring the problems of the multicultural and Islamized society. And that's no wonder. Once again, walk through the streets of so many cities in Europe and you will think that you are in a different world, that you're not in Holland but somewhere in Arabia, that there is a lot of crime, that there are other values, which is very costly and very dangerous as well. And that's why my party, the Party for Freedom, out of nothing, became, in the elections in Holland 2 years ago, the third biggest party in the Netherlands. We see the same happening in Denmark, where even longer there is a kind of party like mine, the Danish Freedom Party, that has the same political agenda. So I hope that this momentum will get stronger, that Europe and the European people will, with elections, will show to the political elite that they are fed up by ignoring the problem, that they don't want Europe to be Islamized, and that they are proud on who they are. And maybe you allow me to make one more point. What's the difference between America and Europe? In Europe we have this terrible institution called the European Union. And the European Union, I say as a European myself, has lost us with this supranational organization of a feeling of national identity. Europe, because of this European Union, has lost knowledge of who they are. There are unelected bureaucrats who are ruling many countries. In my country, Holland, more than half of the laws are not initiated by my capital, but are initiated by Brussels. So I believe we should step out of the supranational bureaucratic organization called the European Union, go back to our national identity, go back to the respect for our own values and identity. And I believe both when it comes to economics and small government and when it comes to the immigration that we will have to win a lot.
And do you believe or hope for yourself that there's ever a time that you will be able to live without fear for your own safety?
Well, of course I hope so. And if it's not for me, then it's certainly for my wife and my family. But I have to be honest, it probably will not be tomorrow and not the day after tomorrow either. And the book might not help for that reason, but still, I believe that the mission that I see is so enormously important. There are unfortunately not hundreds of politicians, at least not in Europe, that voice the concern about the Islamization, because once again, the price you pay is very high. You are labeled either an idiot or an extremist or a crazy conservative. You are taken to court, you get fatwas. I mean, it's not very attractive to speak out and tell the truth about Islam. But still, people should do it, because what is at stake is our freedom, and there is nothing more important than the freedom of us and our children.
Well, I think that might be a good note to end on. Thank you so much for your time and
Thank
for
you
being
for having
here.
me. Thank you so much.
And your book, Marked for Death, has been released May 1st.
Yeah.
So everyone should read it.
I hope so, really, yeah.